the answers are actually all around us, and it's more a matter of asking the question. Hi, my name is Damon Johnston. I came over from Saskatchewan in '76 following a girlfriend at the time, and I really didn't know what I was going to do with myself. She was going to interior design in Mount Royal College at that time, and I just went to the University of Calgary and thought, well, I'll fish around here and see what I'd like to do. And I took a variety of classes. It wasn't really, nothing seemed to fit. But after classes every evening, I'd go for a beer in the lounge, and there was these guys and these gals who were always hanging around, or I'd wait for them to show up and I'd watch them, and they were always backslapping and having a heck of a good time. And they invited me to join them one day, and I found out that they were, theater students. And I thought, well, that's curious, because I don't even remember having seen any theater in high school. It just wasn't my thing. I was kind of a bit more athletically inclined, I guess. Anyways, I decided to, one of the guys said to me, why don't you give me a hand? Because I need another hand to operate this antique lighting board. And I said, sure, I can do that. And all of a sudden, there I was in the backstage area of a live concert, and helping this guy out kind of make the sound and light happen. And I thought to myself, wow, this is really something. I mean, here we are, we're kind of part of it, but we're not the people who have to be out there on stage, because that's the last thing I ever wanted to do, was go out underneath the limelight. But I thought, well, I'm going to take some drama classes and see what I think of it. And I remember going home and telling my girlfriend, hey, I think I've found my vocation. And she says, what's that? And I said, I'm going to, get in with the theater department and study drama. And she left me within about 72 hours. And we'd been seeing each other for, golly, several years. And of course, I was devastated. I just thought, my God, how could this happen to me? But I was undeterred. I thought, I'm going to go through with this because I really am very, very curious. I felt there was something there. I found those people who wanted to step out in front of an audience and perform. I found that an absolutely stunning thing for someone to do. And when I saw good people doing their craft, I was so humbled by it. I thought, I'm going to do whatever I can to support this person. And ergo, I became an arts manager. Wow. Probably one of the biggest challenges I faced in my life was in my workplace. I was working at Dancer Studio West, and I had really done a lot of development there in the 4 years I was there, but I felt as though something was wrong here, and it really was wrong. You know how one must trust their feelings. If you have a sense that something's going on, well, you better listen to that, because more often than not, you're right. And it's so easy for a person to just say, hey, that's silly. I mean, why should I be afraid of going down that dark street? There may be a reason that you shouldn't go down that dark street. So, at Dancer Studio West, I had gathered a group of supporters around me who were the board of directors, and ultimately, they fired me. I just couldn't believe, after all the work I'd done in developing the place, they said, no, you're not the right person for this. And I had to make a big decision about how hard I was going to fight for that job. And I was tired and I was burnt out at that time. And I said, no, I'm just not going to fight it. They've fired me. I'm simply going to go away. I don't want to do this for a living anymore. This whole thing just sucks. And so I did. I chose to just roll over and move away from it. And it's one of the greatest regrets I've ever had in my life. I sincerely regret doing that. Losing that job at Dancer Studio West has ended up being a very big lesson to me, a life lesson. And really that life lesson was all about knowing that if you believe in yourself and you work hard and you listen to your inner voices, this is critical, listening to your inner voices and not not setting them aside. And it's so easy for us to kind of go, I don't know. But you have to really, dig deep and say to yourself, I can make it through this if I really want to. I can find a way. Losing that job ended up being a springboard for me now into the person I am now. It allowed me to take a good shot on the chin, but it didn't put me down. It just helped develop my character. And now I'm very sensitive about those things, and I'm very careful about who I surround myself with. But it was that lesson that allowed me to grow. I guess it's probably going to happen to most people in their life. When you take a hard bashing, you have to get back up, it's the old saying, and dust yourself off and get back on the horse or whatever it is, because especially if it's what you do for a living, you have to move through it. Trying to pin together a life when you're in the performing arts can be difficult. I mean, you've got, your work, which you're so passionate about, and often we'd work 12 and 14-hour days, and I didn't really care about, getting groceries, and I didn't really care about a relationship, and I found myself completely wound up in my work. And I thought to myself, am I going to be able to afford a car or a mortgage? Am I going to be able to take a holiday? And I thought to myself, does that stuff really matter that much to me? And I decided it didn't. Everything was about the work because of the incredible amount of joy it gave me. It really was so soul-feeding, the work that we were doing. And of course, in comes an audience, the pressures of that, the excitement of that, and opening nights and doing concerts and going on tour. The whole thing was a whirlwind, and it was easy enough for you to set aside the wonderments of, am I saving any money? Am I going to be able to have a future and raise a family? And as it turns out, I was able to do those things. Even though I really kind of doubted it in the beginning, I realized that, that you can really do anything you want to as long as you set your mind to it and do it with a pure conscience and not be kidding yourself. I very much remember having a conversation with my parents and going home from Calgary and saying to myself on the road home, well, I guess I'm going to have to tell them that I've decided I'm going to take up a life in the theater. And thankfully, they were people who were aware of the performing arts, and I had had art and literature and music in my life all my life. But still, when I got home, and I said to my father, who I respected very much and loved very much, I said, hey, Dad, I've decided that I'm going to pursue a career in artist management and theater management. And I kind of held my breath. And he turned to me and said, that's fantastic. Good for you. I totally support that. And it was such a moment of relief, because I just didn't know what he was going to say, whether he was going to say, are you kidding yourself? Have you met anybody who's done that? Where in heaven's name did you ever get the idea that that would be a career that you'd be interested in doing? You don't know any theater managers, none of that around, but his support meant the world to me, and it helped me, kind of go into it like a dagger. I really went in deep. Our family had a cottage way in the north of Saskatchewan, and it was a place where we would go to, and of course we were allowed to run wild up there, and it was just a series of lakes and rivers. We did a lot of camping, we did a lot of fishing, but we would camp as a family, and my father would take our dear mother, who never learned to swim, off the farm. And we would all get into a canoe, 5 kids, 2 dogs, 2 parents, and we'd set off down the lake. And so those early family trips were really seminal experiences for me as a young person, because we had to kind of pull it all together. We had to follow a map. Then when we landed, we had to set up a camp. We'd have to build a fire, cook dinner, and all of those things were things that helped me gain a lot of I felt that those were central to my having confidence in myself as a young man, to that, not worry too much about whether something can happen or not, and to be prepared to take on things that you're kind of wondering, is this going to work? But to just dive in and do it. And those early experiences I had as a kid in the north camping really were a foundation for what would come later, as far as believing in yourself and understanding that if you stop and think, you will find a way through it. You will find a way through your difficulty, whether that is finding a place in the setting sun for you to set up a camp for the night, or whether it was to later find yourself a sponsor to help you achieve a production that you very much wanted to undertake. And inspiration really came to me fundamentally in just a couple of ways. And they were both productions that I saw. One of them was by a group called Carbon 14, Carbon 14, in Montreal. And I went to a concert of theirs, not having ever seen the company before, but I'd heard about them. And they were down in some, dark studio in the old tobacco district in Montreal. And I went in there and I was alone. And I was down in Montreal at an arts conference, and I said, well, I'm gonna see what all the fuss is about. And they put on a concert called Le Dortoir. And that singular concert was so powerful that I sat there afterwards not wanting to move. As a matter of fact, I sat there for so long, and everyone was long gone, that eventually somebody came and said, excuse me, sir, but you've got to go now, because the show's been over for an hour. And I just didn't want to break the spell. It was an incredibly inspirational moment. One of two. The other one was when I was working with Dancer Studio West, and we presented the group La 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 with the famous director Edward Locke. And they came out to Calgary, and they had a team there. They were a pretty rough-looking bunch, but they had a program with them called Businessman in the Process of Becoming an Angel. And setting up that show with them and preparing to invite an audience to come in and see it was a big challenge, because we had spent a lot of money hiring the company. And we were, of course, going to be on the hook for getting it back by box office. But opening night came, and that show was so incredibly inspirational to me that it ultimately set me on my path with dance and said, well, this dance show was the best thing I've ever seen in my life. Really, by a country mile, the most inspirational thing I've ever seen, and I must spend the rest of my career doing whatever I can to move artists like this forward. I want to work with them, and I want to move them forward. You know, when you finally see something or do something that really moves you, you know it inside of yourself. You say to yourself, golly, this is a moment. This right now is a moment, whether it's music or whether it's a sunset that you're seeing. You know, those moments are things that you have to say to yourself, this is telling me something, this moment. There is something here that is telling me that I have to pursue this. I have to ultimately stay with this because it means so much to me. I know it. You just know it. I mean, it's like, you know, that silly business of, you'll know it when you fall in love. Well, by golly, you know it when you've been inspired. And man, I was inspired. I'm incredibly grateful for the community that I'm part of. There are dancers, there are actors, there are arts managers, there are poets, there are technicians, there's designers, painters. All of those people have helped form me into what I am. And it's through that community of people that I have surrounded myself with that I've been able to go about doing what I'm doing. And really, I've got to say that I'm very grateful for their support. I suppose we support each other. They've said as much to me, but really, it's gratitude springs really from, you know, that whole business of being able to say to someone, yes, you know, this has meant a great deal to me, and you have been a part of it. I've always been very keen on making sure that I express my gratitude to people. I think it's very important. There's no such thing as someone receiving too much gratitude for what they do. It's critical. I think we all need it, much like love. Not only are you going to receive advice and some teaching along the way in your profession or in your love life, but that you must also turn around and impart wisdom and advice to those around you and to those who are younger than you, and make sure that, you know, that you give them every opportunity to grow and develop the way you are. I feel extremely fortunate. I really do, for the people around me, the advice I've got over the years, and that has led to me wanting to turn around and give that back. In my existing job, whenever someone comes and does a show, I will often say to them afterwards, and they're thanking me for having the opportunity to be staged, and I'll say, hey, you know, if you ever need anybody to write you a letter of recommendation or something like that, or if you need a little bit of help with a development of a contract, like when I work with young artists, I say to them, hey, you know, even if you go and perform violin at a wedding, you still got to have some information. And so you should build yourself a wretched little contract. The date, the time, how much money you're getting paid, do you get parking? I'll throw that together for you if you want that. And inevitably, they've been very happy to receive things like that that are just incremental little things that will assist them as an artist to be a good and professional artist. Sometimes, you know, in darker moments, you say to yourself, golly, should I be doing this? And why am I doing this? And why have I decided to do all this? And I think that ultimately you have to have belief in yourself. And when you say things like, why am I here? You have to have a foundation of beliefs in yourself and in what you're doing in order to, you know, answer that question. That's why you're here. Find what you love and follow it, and make the best you can of it, and and really jump in with both feet. You can't be on the margin of something and wonder whether it's going to work for you. You have to give it your everything. I know that's an old saying, but giving it your everything will ultimately lead you to know whether it is your thing or not. Any kind of half measure will not do. You really have to, you have to believe in yourself and really go for it. And that way you'll soon find out whether it is your niche or whether it's not. And it's okay if it's not. You're just going to get there sooner if you go all the way in rather than lay on the edge. The answers are actually all around us, and it's more a matter of asking the question and asking for advice and seeking out knowledge. Look around yourself, see who's there, who do you admire, why do you admire them, emulate them, ask them questions, be like them. Staying in the theater business amounted to having to be truthful to myself and saying to myself, you know, I may not be making as much money as my friend who's become an accountant or a realtor or something like that, but I deeply, deeply believed in what I was doing. And that, I decided, was going to be what was going to make it all work for me, is a really firm belief that doing what I felt I was meant to do for a living was really what was going to help me, you know, make a life of it in the end and be happy with the vacations that I ended up on or the third-hand car that I ended up driving. All of those things didn't matter as much because I had given myself allowance to do what I was passionate about. And ultimately, you know, that is really what I'm so happy about in my life. I feel as though I've done something that is really, really not only fulfilling, but it's given me so much joy. And meeting other people and them telling me, oh my God, you know, it's hump day. Well, I never dreamt of a hump day in my life. I never looked at a watch and said, thank God it's 5 o'clock and I can go home. It was all about work and my deep, deep love of it. And I can think now that I look back in hindsight that, you know, it has all worked out. And, you know, you can wonder whether it's going to work for you until the cows come home. You can wonder whether you can afford this. You can wonder whether I can have a family. But if you really believe in what you're doing and you're passionate about it, you will ultimately find a way through. Really. Trust me.